Hi, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes having a look at a method for resolving forces. Here we've got a right angled triangle with the force I want to resolve as the hypotenuse of my triangle. The force will always be the hypotenuse. So because of that, and because of the fact we've got an angle in the right angled triangle, I know it's got to be cos or sine. It'll only be tan if I'm trying to find the angle of the resultant. And most of the time in mechanics, we're breaking up the resultant into two perpendicular vectors. So the question is whether I want to use cos or whether I want to use sine. The method that I'm going to show you is where we do it by closing the angle. You can do it by using properties of parallel lines and moving the angle to the right place and then deciding whether it wants to be cos or sine. But we're going to have a look at closing the angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine the angle becoming 0. So I'm just going to move the slider, and you can see that doing that's changing the angle. If I make the angle go all the way to 0, you can see that now my force is entirely going horizontally, and the horizontal component is the same length as my force. So what I really want is that when my angle's 0, for my force to be times 1 for my horizontal component. The blue bit is my horizontal component, and you can see because of that we want cos alpha. When I put my angle back, it's still going to be cos alpha. The triangle hasn't changed. The same with my vertical components. So you can see my vertical components in red. If I make the angle 0, then none of my force is going in the same direction as the vertical component. So I don't want any of it. And I just need to think, will sine of 0 give me none of it, or will cos of 0 give me none of it? And it happens to be that sine of 0 will give me none of it. Let's have a look at another situation. This is something which fairly typically comes up in mechanics. I've got an object on a slope, and I just want to decide whether the weight component is going to be cos or sine when I resolve parallel and perpendicular to the slope. So I've got my angle again, I can adjust it, but this time you can see my angle's nowhere near my vector. But it doesn't need to be for this method. Again, I'm going to imagine my angle becoming 0, and then you can see that parallel is now horizontal and vertical is now my perpendicular. And my weight, because weight always acts downwards, is now perpendicular to my plane. So because if I'm looking perpendicular, I want all of it, it's going to be cos theta because I want to times by 1, whereas if I want to resolve parallel to the plane, well now none of my weight is acting parallel to the plane, so I'm going to want to multiply it by sine theta because sine of 0 gives me none of it. I hope that helps when you're resolving forces, and good luck with the rest of mechanics.